Welcome, my dear guests. Tonight, I offer a tale as sharp as a cold winter wind, where innocence meets the icy hand of consequence. But first, let us set the mood with a sip of something delightfully chilling our evening's concoction, the frosted winter blossom. This frosty, sparkling delight mirrors the icy unease of Maya's descent into Krampus's clutches, yet refreshing and deceptive, much like the story that unfolds. Tonight's story: The Naughty List Girl. Maya Whitmore had always been a troublemaker. It wasn't so much that she wanted to be. It was just that the world seemed to conspire against her. She wasn't like the other girls in her family. She wasn't like the other girls at her school. She was different, and not in a good way. At 17, Maya had already been expelled from 3 different schools, each for something worse than the last. A stolen test paper here, an argument with a teacher there, and a few too many late-night parties that ended with the police knocking on her door. Maya didn't care. Her parents didn't care either. Not really. They were the type who swept things under the rug, throwing money and empty promises at problems they didn't want to confront. When she was sent to St. Bridget's Academy, a private girls' boarding school, it was supposed to be her last chance. Her last chance to be reformed, whatever that meant. But Maya didn't care about that either. The way she saw it, St. Bridget's was just another institution for people who couldn't stand the idea of someone being different. Another place where rules and authority ruled, and she would soon break out of them, just like she always had. The school looked perfect on the outside, though. It was set on a sprawling estate with whitewashed buildings, manicured lawns, and perfectly trimmed hedges. The kind of place you'd see in a romantic movie or a picture-perfect postcard. On the surface, it was bright, cheerful, and innocent. But to Maya, it was just a cage with walls of glass. Inside, it was no different. The halls gleamed with polished floors, and the classrooms were decorated with bright pastel colors. Teachers smiled at her like she was a lost puppy they were desperate to tame. But Maya knew better. She saw through the smile and the pleasantries. The school was as fake as her family's promises, as phony as the perfect girls that walked the hallways, whispering behind her back. It was just a matter of time before she made her mark here, too. One evening, as the light from the setting sun poured into her small, cold dorm room, the silence of the room was almost suffocating. Maya had long since given up trying to make friends here. Most of the other girls either ignored her or treated her like a leper. She didn't mind. She didn't need them. It was then that she noticed something odd: a letter. It was addressed to her in a shaky, elegant handwriting that looked like it belonged to someone older. The envelope was plain, except for a strange, snowflake-shaped wax seal stamped on the back. A chill ran through her as she touched it. It was almost as if the world itself had stopped when the letter found its way to her. Curious and cautious, Maya tore open the envelope. Inside was a single piece of parchment, yellowed with age, and written in bold black ink. Maya Whitmore, you have been very naughty this year. Your actions have caused ripples of misfortune that have been noticed by the powers that be. You may think no one sees your mistakes, but they do. You will receive your warning soon. The list is always watching. Signed, Santa. Maya's laugh was hollow. Santa Claus? Really? Who was this person kidding? She wasn't a little kid anymore. The last thing she believed in was some jolly old man in a red suit who brought toys to good girls and boys. She crumpled the letter in her hand and threw it in the trash. A mistake, she thought. Just some bored person in the school who wanted to play a prank. But that wasn't the end of it. The letters kept coming. Each one was worse than the last. The first few letters had threatening messages, accusing her of misdeeds, of being too defiant, too rebellious, too uncaring about the consequences of her actions. But it was always signed, in some form or another, by Santa Claus. Every time, Maya tossed them aside. She ripped them apart, tore them to pieces, laughed at their absurdity. Nothing could scare her. Nothing. Then the next letter came, but this time it was different. The handwriting had changed. It was no longer the neat script she had seen before. Instead, it was scribbled in a jagged, almost frantic manner. Maya Whitmore, you are on the naughty list. You cannot escape what's coming. You may try to laugh, to ignore, to pretend it doesn't matter, but I assure you it does. The list has power. You cannot outrun it. Signed, Santa. This time, Maya didn't laugh. This time, she felt a twinge of unease. But still, she tossed the letter in the fire, watching it burn, the flames licking at the edges of the paper as if it were mocking her. It was nothing, she told herself. A sick joke, nothing more. She went to bed, tossing and turning in the dark, but the unease lingered. Days went by. The letters kept coming. With each one, the messages grew darker and more cryptic. Maya began to feel as though she were being watched, as if something out there was waiting for her to slip up, to make one wrong move, so it could claim her. But Maya was unshaken. She kept destroying the letters, laughing them off like they were nothing. She had bigger problems to worry about. Her parents were still distant, still uninterested in her life. She hated being at the school, hated the rules, hated the perfect girls who looked at her like she was a monster. Nothing had changed. Until the day it all changed. The final letter came late, one evening when Maya was alone in her room. She had been expecting it, somehow. The air felt thicker, colder, like the world had been holding its breath. This letter wasn't addressed in neat handwriting. It was scrawled in red ink, dripping with an almost unnatural viscosity, and sealed with a black wax seal shaped like a grotesque, twisted figure that resembled a horned demon. Maya tore it open, her heart racing, not sure what to expect. Maya Whitmore, you have crossed the line. Your defiance has gone too far, and now you will face the consequences. You will not be able to hide. No one will hear you. No one will see you. The darkness is coming for you. Signed, Krampus. The moment she finished reading, a sickening laugh echoed through the hallways of the school, loud and guttural, as if it were coming from every direction at once. Krampus. A cold wave of dread washed over Maya, her skin prickling. She felt her stomach lurch as the lights flickered in her room. Something was coming. Panicking, Maya ran out into the hallway, screaming, calling for help. But no one came. No one responded. The entire building felt wrong, hollow, like it was made of paper. She ran down the stairs, but it was like no one could hear her. She pounded on the doors, yelled out in every direction. Her voice was swallowed by the silence, her desperate cries becoming faint echoes. And then she saw him. Krampus. He stood there, tall and imposing. A hulking figure draped in dark furs, his hooves clicking on the stone floor as he walked toward her. His eyes were piercing, glowing with a malevolent, fiery light. With a twisted grin, he slid a final letter under the door of the dormitory room she had locked herself in, laughing as he did. Inside, trembling, Maya picked up the letter, her hands shaking as she opened it. Maya Whitmore, you have been erased. No one will ever remember you. Your life is over. You are lost, forever forgotten. The world has no place for you now. Maya's breath caught in her throat. She dropped the letter, tears welling in her eyes, her mind screaming in disbelief. But the letter was true. The next morning, Maya stepped out of her dorm room, expecting to find help, to find someone who could tell her it was all a mistake. But when she looked at the girls walking by, they didn't see her. They didn't acknowledge her. She called out, but they walked on, oblivious to her existence. Maya stumbled into the halls, frantic, her eyes darting from person to person. She tried to talk to them, to scream at them, but they didn't hear her. She ran to her parents' house, only to find the same thing. No one answered her knocks. When the door finally opened, her parents stood there, their eyes blank, looking right through her. Maya ran into the house, only to find that she was missing from the family photos. Her name was no longer on the school roster. Her friends had never existed. No one remembered her. She was gone, in the dark. Krampus's laugh echoed through her mind. No one would ever know the truth. Maya Whitmore was lost to the naughty list, never to be seen again, her name wiped from existence. And as for Krampus, he was still out there, waiting for his next victim. And so, the lesson is learned, though perhaps too late for our wayward Maya. Naughty or nice, the list remembers. Always. Until next we meet, my dear guests, savor the light and beware the shadows.